Ready? 1, 2, 3. Jordan Harvey, how we doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. You have an amazing setup here. Excited to be a guest.
Thank you. This is the second guest I've had with this setup, so you're fortunate. I know you're not the first one, but at least the second.
Who was the first?
Enrique was.
Okay, I can follow Enrique. That's cool. That's
Good
cool.
guy.
Tough, but hopefully.
It is. You know, it's funny, Jordan. I see you around the office all the time, and obviously I knew you had a long career, but not really knowing you in that sense because you're very you're super humble at the office. You are. I don't see it.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. No, I've been a hard worker and had to earn everything that I've gotten throughout my soccer career. So at no point was I ever the top man. So I don't think I carry myself with that mentality. It's always just trying to grind away at whatever I'm doing.
Yeah. No, I've do extensive research on this, so I was looking at certain things and
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia. You can do so many different things now. You know, just looking up stuff, humanitarian, all these amazing awards. So for you, is that something that, because I know there's times where you battle for something, you get it, and then some people just take their foot off the gas pedal and just relax. So never been like that.
No, it's never come easy, that's for sure. I mean, just being realistic about my attributes. I'm not the biggest, I'm not the fastest. I've had to work extremely hard and make sacrifices for every stage in my career to get to that point. You know, at the earliest stages, and I think going through my career, there's been some sort of test. And I think that is huge for players and their growth and their development, is to create that mentality. So at every point, whether it's not making a district team when you're 10 years old, you know, going through the Olympic development program, not making a regional team, all of these things have added up to then create a hardworking mentality. Obviously, I have my parents to attribute to that as well. You know, my mom just grinded away. She still was like on her slope gardening every day. My dad is a person of routine, I guess. So every day he's just the same thing, very professional in what he was doing. He worked at Lake Mission Viejo as an assistant biologist. So like those two, you know, to look at and aspire to be like, I think that also helped. But I know we were talking about just different stories of how you create that mentality. And so yesterday I was kind of thinking of different things, and in coming here as well, a few pop out to me that were so vivid and I'll never forget them. And one of them was, and I alluded to it with the Olympic development program. And there are moments throughout a career, and I know we're just jumping into this right now, that stand out to you as like pivotal moments where, you know, you realize where you're at and how much you need to work. And there's regional, I don't know if you're familiar with Olympic development program, but it was basically the way to the national team. When we were growing up, I'm an 84, so that was the path. There was no scouts really looking at club teams, and that was the only way to make the district team, to make the state team, regional team, and so on. And so it was roughly 13, 14 when we would go to like Iowa to do regional camp. And I was with my Cal South team, which was made up of a lot of actual pros looking back, a Chad Marshall, a Tyson Wall, David Chun had a cup of coffee in the league, a few other guys. But having that experience, going somewhere different in dorms, playing games day in, day out. And then at the end of it, there is a auditorium where they call the players who have made the team up.
I remember. I've had that experience, and I didn't get called.
So as I guess you experienced as well, you're sitting around your teammates. They're all getting called up. I felt like I had a great tournament. The coaches were super positive. I wasn't called. I swear I had 10 teammates. 9 of them were called up. I was the only one sitting there. I was, I guess 13-ish, 14. And I left the auditorium, instantly went to a phone to call my parents, and just bawling, crying. Didn't make the team. I'm coming home. My dad didn't really know what to expect. He was like, all right, we'll come home and, you know, we'll just keep playing, enjoying soccer. It wasn't 10 seconds, 15 seconds into that conversation that probably 5 teammates were running down the street. I had to go 2 blocks away. Jordan, you made it. You made it. You made it. Apparently a player didn't like to travel. He backed out. I was the alternative. I was like the alternate for a fullback position. By the skin of my teeth, somehow made it into that next round. There was an A, B, C team. I was obviously on the C team, but it was that moment, just bawling, friends coming, going, dude, you made it. Like, I can't believe it. My dad on the other end. And I've had these conversations with him many times throughout my life where I've been on the phone and then something has happened. It's weird that it always happens like this with my dad. And he's like, and he's one that panics because he likes his routine. He likes things set in place. And so he's like, what's going on? Jordan, I don't understand. What's going on? What's going on? I was like, apparently I made the team now. I don't know what this means. I need to go talk to a coach. Just wiping tears off my cheeks, go in. And it's that kind of like switch of a perspective. Having been on the outside, it was that moment, and I still remember it to this day very vividly, that pushed me to never take anything for granted, to earn everything I have. And within the next week of being in Iowa on that C team, I had worked my way up to the A team, made the national team, and then was captaining the under-17 national team. And that is a great little story. But then with everything, it takes 2 steps back, right? So you get these pushes, or at least in my life, I got these pushes up that really gave me confidence, and then you get humbled. You get pushes up, humbled. And so I think that sort of cycle is where I got my hard work, my dedication, and honestly, never being complacent with anything that has come my way.
It's crazy how some of those impactful stories and things that happen to you happen sometimes at a young age, and then sometimes when you turn, your first year in the pros, something like that can happen, and all of a sudden it influences you. So you were fortunate to have that happen to you at the age that you were at.
It's that to then going to college. These days academy players have different pathways they could take. If you're not ready for the professional pathway at 16, which no one really is, there was no second teams for MLS, you go to college. Thankfully, after going to the Under-17 World Cup, I had a good choice of colleges. I was in Residency Program for 2 years. So living away from home, just homesick. I wanted to be on the West Coast, so I limited my options to the West Coast, went to UCLA. And then once again, just thinking that, you speak with the coaches, they say, hey, you're going to come here, you're going to have to earn it. Other national team players had gone to UCLA and played right away. It wasn't the case for me. So I step into a team that is full of veterans, junior, seniors. We go on to win the national championship in my freshman year, but I played a small role, and I was smacked in the face again after such an high of going to a World Cup, being part of a national team, and then coming off the bench, playing left midfield, playing different positions just to get me into the field, playing as a 6 at times, but definitely smacked in the face with that reality that this is another level. These guys are mature. They're 18, 19, 20. You need to earn it again. And so my freshman year was a wake-up call, to say the least. A silver lining of that was to go to the Under-20 World Cup, which was awesome for me. But again, being the younger age of those under-20s, a lot of guys that were already professional on that team. I was sitting on the bench with, Clint Dempsey, who was working his way in as well at that moment. But again, just going back to the college experience, that reality of, okay, wow, all right, here's another huge hurdle. And I give a lot of grace to these kids in that age because looking back, I regret how I handled the situation. I was, for lack of a better term, a brat, and that was very useful for me to grow, to learn, to really develop just as a person, but to also learn from the older guys like a Ryan Futagaki that really helped me humble myself and do it in a way that was super useful for me to then carry out through UCLA in that career.
Yeah. It's a hell of an intro so far.
Yeah, sorry, we just jumped right into it, I guess. But yeah, no, it's just in talking to you beforehand and you highlighting, what are the different hurdles that you've had to encounter. They're so clear to me.
Yeah.
And I hope that other people in their life, that they see that, okay, this helped me become this helped me become this. The adversity that I've been hit with, it's just so clear that they weren't happening to me, they were happening for me.
I think that's the key perspective shift that I think a lot of people need to understand. And we'll get to all the things you're talking about, the national team and the residency program, but looking back now at the early years for Jordan Harvey, give me some perspective of those early years so that people can understand why at 13 that was such a huge influence for you. Like, what was your mental makeup? Just all of that stuff in the early years.
Yeah, I grew up. I had an older brother, 3 years older than me, an older sister who's 6 years older. So I was the youngest. Played every sport. Didn't play organized football, but we always lived in neighborhoods growing up in Mission Viejo where there was a ton of kids, and they were all older than me. And so playing wiffle ball with kids that are like 3, 4 years older than you, it helps you learn how to lose, how to
Yeah.
win, how much it means to win, just that competitive nature. So I lived in two homes growing up. One where there was a kid who was always into different like BMX sports and stuff. So I would always kind of tag along with all these different older guys to show me the path. My brother as well, playing roller hockey to baseball to basketball to football. Just every sport I could get my hands on, I jumped right into. But it was because of the older people that were kind of surrounding me that really made me get better and compete. I have a good friend that, or two, I should say, that I grew up with in my neighborhood. One on the same street is why I said a good friend, Sean Moodhart, and then Todd Greco, my other buddy who lived just literally down the street. So those two kids were my age. And so from kindergarten, I had those two guys who were good at sports. One was good at baseball, one was good at hockey, basketball. I was good at soccer, but we all kind of just competed. And that is what absolutely drove me to be more competitive in playing professional soccer. Without a doubt, I don't know if you know the game Tippet. It's a basketball game. My buddy Sean and I would get into argument after argument, throwing the ball at each other, just pissed off that somebody cheated or I won, he didn't, or vice versa. And it was honestly those battles every day after school we'd play. We'd have 5v5 roller hockey on our street. We lived in a cul-de-sac. But it was that upbringing of just playing every sport. My parents were just like, yeah, go for it, until I started getting better at soccer than I did maybe at baseball. And that was roughly around high school, and then just went down the soccer path.
Yeah, it sounds like you're super emotional about any sport that you play and you put your whole heart into it. So that's probably why that ODP, not hearing your name, you put so much into it and you expect so much from the return, I guess. And you didn't get the return you needed. So I think maybe those formative years are the reason, the emotional side.
Yeah, you're going down like therapy for me, and I've been in therapy for like 10 years now, thankfully, and really enjoy it. But like, yeah, you needing that validation, right? And that is the struggle. Hopefully you use it in a way, as I mentioned, that things are happening for you and you try to shift that perspective. Early on in my career was like the fear of not being enough, the fear of not fulfilling my expectations of what I should be doing at that moment, which you never did. I never did, right? I always needed a little bit more, or comparing yourself to somebody else, which is so wrong. But going back to your question, in those early years, it was that environment that I was in that really drove me to really have a passion for sports and the competition that was a part of it.
So what were you like as a player then? Because obviously now you're talking about all these different sports that you're playing and your best friends and the competition between them. So how did you take that approach to soccer field?
How was I as a player? I just hated to lose anything and everything. Hated to lose a 1v1 battle. Hated to lose any sort of small-sided game. It would sit with me the rest of the day if my team lost. And it still did till the end of my career. It still does to this day, but I think it started in those early years battling with friends to then just kind of growing into the professional environment, which is ultra competitive. So as a player, I would, if you're asking me to describe myself as a player, it was hard working. I had to be, given I didn't have as many attributes as some of these very talented people around me. Determined, and I think that competitive nature really just drove everything. It really did.
So obviously, like not wanting to lose and like having the emotion kind of, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, you're playing on the edge, and I would have loved to have change that perspective again to more of a positive one of just like wanting to win so bad. It goes hand in hand. It's the same thing for me. As a professional, you need to hone that in. Probably was, as I said, just maybe an immature kid that needed to grow, needed to learn, needed to get humbled. And I did multiple times. And I think for me, the ages of, I'd say 17 to 19 were really tough. But as I turned 19, 20, with the luck of having older players around me, I was able to mature and use those experiences to help me move forward.
Let's talk about those, I guess, those years that you went to the residency program then.
It was a crazy, crazy experience. Moving away at 15, they brought all our families out, toured the whole facility, Voluntary Sports Academy in Bradenton, Florida, and basically gave us the choice. Do you want to move in here? It's a 2-year term to go to the Under-17 World Cup, and it was a chance of a lifetime. And so I was teetering on baseball or soccer, but that experience I was, okay, I'm all in on soccer. This is it. To go into the soccer specifically and what that looked like day in, day out, I was all in. So I did everything I could, and that's where I built my routine. That's where I built my professionalism. That's where I built day in, day out, just grinding. You talked about the dorms. I had some great David Johnson, who played for LA Galaxy a little bit and overseas, Chad Marshall, David Chun, this other kid from Texas, Jordan Stone. Very good group. Heath Pierce was a good buddy of mine. Shafiq Simo was my roommate during that time when we go on the road. Different guys who played and are still around the game. But having a good group of kids was first and foremost. But every day I would wake up and have my routine. It was like 6 a.m. And this is at 15, 16.
Because you chose it, or because they created the framework for you?
They created the schedule as far as needing to be at school at this time, but I created my structure just on my own. Honestly, seeing my dad do his thing every day, he'd have to be at work at 8. He'd get up at 5 in the morning, have his cup of coffee, read the paper, be on the road by 7:15, ready to go at 8. That schedule, that structure, I carried and just implemented it in my day-to-day. So I woke up at 6 o'clock. I would go take a shower. Before I showered, I would do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups. This was every day.
Wow.
And shower, go to the meal room, the cafeteria at 6:30, come back, put on our uniforms for Bradenton Academy. My Dickies and my polos, I had like 5 different colors, same Dickies, and would go to school roughly like 7:30. They'd put us on buses, go to school, come back, and then it was soccer in the afternoon. I couldn't tell you like the structure of everything. It was a lot of just small-sided games, a lot of games where we'd go on trips to different colleges, play MLS teams, go on trips to tournaments for preparation. But that sort of structure of every day doing this, I think that's what prepared me. And ultimately being the captain of that team, along with a friend who has left us, Gray Griffin, the two of us being the captain of that team, I think it was that kind of structure that the coaches saw, and being able to kind of lead a group at a young age was ultimately, what led us to success. We did the qualifiers, did well, but I mean, we don't need to go into the World Cup tournament.
Yeah.
In our group, we had 2 teams that ended up making the final in France and Nigeria, but it was a great group and an amazing experience. But to dive into some of the difficult things, at 15, going somewhere for 2 years, I was homesick almost every day. So that was the difficult part. There was no FaceTime. There was no, we tried to, have a video chat that was very spotty, ended up not using it at all. But that was the difficult part, was just being away from home.
Yeah. Did you understand how big of a deal that was to be captaining the U17s going into the World Cup, or did that never occur to you at the moment?
No, you're a kid. So you take what's in front of you and just move forward. And again, it comes with, confidence and this like validation. And that was amazing. But no, it's not like you were like, I'm the best player in the nation. That's not at all what I thought. I knew that there were better players on my team. And then going to the World Cup, being humbled quite a bit by the level that was there. And any team I've ever been on, I've never thought that I was, the top player. I knew that I was a hardworking guy that added a lot on and off the field, but I've always been a team player.
Yeah. And it's a good point, though. I think a lot of kids, they have identity crisis a little bit, not knowing what they bring to the team. And I think, like you're saying, you always kind of had that fallback. If all shit hits the fan, all I know is that I'm going to work my ass off. I'm going to give everything to the team. Sometimes the emotion might get the best of me, But at the end of the day, you had something to fall back on. And I think for the young kids out there listening, that's something that you need to understand. What you can control is the effort that you put in. At the end of the day, you start rounding out your technical proficiency and all that stuff. But just make sure that every single time you're being asked from the coach, identify what they want tactically. And then from there, 100%.
That is something. And Chad Marshall, a dude who had a long career, I'm sure you know him. He's somebody who, during that residency program, just it's very light, but put things in perspective for me. And it's something that I carried through my whole career. If you put every ounce of your effort into that training, that game, that weight session, at the end of the day, you should be satisfied because you did everything you could to bring your best self to that experience, to that game. And win, lose, draw, like you should be satisfied. And so I approached, honestly, every game like that, professionally and otherwise. And now after my career, the same thing. And I can rest on the fact that I've done everything I can.
Let's talk about those college days then. I know we talked about it early in the podcast, but from what I know, you can have the pick of the litter when it comes to colleges when you are the Gatorade National Player of the Year. So I think you winning that award, was that a surprise to you? How did you handle that? Was that, now you're in your community, people already knew you were a big time guy, but now that in itself just inflates maybe a little bit more.
Yes, the Gatorade Player of the Year, that was a shock to me. I didn't even know that I was up for it or anything like that. My senior year, my parents, and this is just how they kind of unfolded it to me. I don't know if you know the Irvine Spectrum.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so there was a place called like the Fox and Hound. And my mom had said, listen, it's my brother-in-law, Mike's birthday. We're going to go to the Fox and Hound. The whole family's going. So got dressed, went down there, and lo and behold, they announced it was my Gatorade Player of the Year, like dinner celebration. They had all my friends and family around, and the special part that I will never forget, it was very special to me, was each person went around and kind of shared a story. And that was something that I was blown away by, just friends, just, being vulnerable and opening up about what I've meant to them and vice versa. But that experience, I don't take the Gatorade Player of the Year. I take more so that sort of experience and what that meant to me in that way. The Gatorade Player of the Year stuff, that never carried with me. Not many people know about that, in all honesty. But going into college, especially UCLA, there were so many national team guys that went to UCLA at the time that things like that didn't matter to them.
Sure.
Ultimately, guys who came in with some sort of like chip on their shoulder or thinking that they were something bigger than, what was already there, it was looked down on. Chad Barrett, when I was in college, came in with his national team gear on his visit. And we were like, buddy, like you need to get rid of this stuff. That was something where you didn't want to go in and start sharing all these things. You just kind of wanted to go in and, again, just earn your spot, work hard. It was the validation that was huge, but I didn't actually take that on to mean that I was the best player in the nation, in all honesty, because I looked at it as I have worked hard with the under-17 national team. I was the captain. I did everything I could, but I also looked at like the Eddie Johnsons, the Santino Quarantos. I was like, these guys at this moment are much better than me. Mike McGee. I was like, so I never had this false sense of self where I was like, I'm better than everybody. I never had that. I feel like I had a good sense of where I landed on the spectrum.
Yeah. We'll look at your 4 years at UCLA. You guys, I think still to this day, your class has won 4 consecutive Pac-12 at that time, Pac-10 championships. Yeah. So that's unheard of nowadays for a class to win all 4 of their conference championships in a row. So your class started it off. It is, yeah. Well, from what I know, at least.
I always felt like that was the standard at UCLA. So it never go on, I guess.
No. So, but that's, again, look at the 4 years and you can zoom out and say those 4 years, yes, Jordan, you contributed a lot. But in that first season, I think you alluded to it earlier, you coming in, having co-captained the U17 national team, going to a World Cup. Now you're saying even at UCLA, there's a history of national team players coming in. So you're not really a big deal there. So you had to learn quick, I'm sure, from that first season. I think you played in 13 of the games, no? Something like that?
I don't.
Okay, so you played in like 13 of the games, and in that season, you didn't contribute as much as you wanted to, or what was?
No, not at all. No, I came off the bench. I maybe started a handful of games, but I was coming into a group, like I said, seniors, juniors. If they weren't seniors and juniors, they were national team guys in their sophomore years, fifth year seniors, like I said, Ryan Futagaki, Zach Wells. Coming into a group like that, you understand very quickly that the level is high and you're the low man on the totem pole. Again, when you're coming off of under 17s, when you're in a high, you think that you'll be playing. There are other teams that you were looking at, college programs that, were like, you'll jump into the lineup right away. And naively, everybody goes to a place thinking that they're going to play right away. I thought that was going to be the case. I was going to earn my way, but I would be able to earn it. It wasn't the case. You said it, 13 games. I didn't play a single minute in the national championship run.
Wow.
That was something that hurts to this day, that I wasn't able to contribute to that national team run. I went into that off season going, I don't want this feeling ever again. I need to be a significant player moving forward. I need to work hard. I need to do whatever it takes to get on this field and contribute more. Obviously, seniors graduate, so there is that opportunity. But it was that experience in particular, going through that tournament in Texas. Man, it was like a ball in my gut, just hurt so bad. And again, humbled me. I was a freshman. Of course, you can look at it and say, you're a freshman, like it'll come. But I had expectations of playing right away. The team we played in Stanford had Chad Marshall, who I played with club soccer-wise, who had an amazing college career, left early to go into the draft and had an amazing career. And of course, I'm looking across going, man, he's on the field. Man, I should be on this field. Obviously, comparing yourself to friends, former teammates. And so it was a difficult moment for me, for sure. In moments like that is where I started off-season programs that I would never stop, really. I would just work as hard as I could throughout the off-season. Whatever program was given to me, I'd try to do more than that and come in every preseason like ready to go.
Jeez. Well, the next season, you guys win 20 games, have a really good season. You guys go to the quarterfinals of the NCAA tournament, but I don't think you play. You actually go to the U20 World Cup. So you put all that work in the offseason, 20-win season. You guys are doing amazing. And then now, again, was it kind of a heartbreaker for you, or was it kind of like, okay, if I'm missing the run with UCLA, I'm actually going to be going to the U20 World Cup? So,
Yeah, of course, it was a good moment and something I couldn't pass up as far as the U20 World Cup, and that experience was amazing. Again, though, like leaving at the end of the season, going down to the end of the season with just like a little bittersweet taste in your mouth, where I contributed to a lot of games that season, honestly, and I don't know, coaches that I've played with professionally, I played as like a 6 as in the midfield, and then as like a left mid a little bit, but it's tough. You have decisions that need to be made, but going to that tournament was a bucket list thing. You have to go to an Under-20 World Cup. But with that said, the experience that I had my freshman year going to the Under-20 World Cup, I was, fourth, fifth man on the bench with that group because it was a really good squad that we ended up losing to Argentina on a heartbreaker, the team that had like Mascherano on it, like quality players.
Jeez.
But that experience was amazing. So I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it also set me up for, another, like, I got to get better. I got to work harder. I've got to do more. Again, I didn't have the attributes, so I just tried to max out everything I possibly could. So my fitness was probably my best attribute in that moment. Thank God I had a left foot that kept me involved on that left side, but it was just trying to grab a hold of any and every opportunity I had.
Going into now your junior and senior year, kind of wrapping up college, what from those experiences, sum it all up for me in those 4 years, plus the 2 World Cups, plus the residency program, what did you take with you in terms of your approach going into the pro game?
If I had to sum it up in a word, it'd be maturity and just overcoming not major obstacles, but growing as a person and developing my mentality that then would set me up for a successful career.
And you go in now, you get, I think, 9th overall, picked up by the Rapids.
Yes, but that experience, the way you just kind of said it in one sentence, doesn't really give it the depth that it was. To backtrack a little bit, after my senior year, I wasn't sure if I was going into the combine,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up being invited. I didn't approach that the way I would have liked. I had time off after the season. I wasn't fit enough. I wasn't ready for the combine. And then the super draft comes around. I didn't have an agent. I didn't need one, in all honesty, but I didn't have insight into if there were teams interested. I didn't have anybody to manage my expectations. So I sat there, and I remember this again pretty vividly with my family, thinking that I was going to get a call on that first day with the super draft, and with each pick just got passed. And so again, seeing friends be drafted, seeing guys who you've played with your whole life being drafted, that day ended with tears and disappointment and just being crushed with the thought that I wasn't good enough. The next day, they had round 3 and 4, what they called the supplemental draft. So ultimately, the draft is much bigger now. So I feel like I guess I would have been picked on the first day, but that experience also and that adversity set me up for what Colorado looked like going into my professional career. I was not selected first day. Going into second day, I would sign any contract they would put in front of my face just to have an opportunity to play professionally. 2 years prior, thinking I was going to get a contract. This is awesome. Generation Adidas is going to come at some point, right? Never came. Then you don't get drafted first day. You get picked up in the supplemental draft by Colorado, which I was so grateful for. And then hopping on a flight, getting there and going, I just need to do anything and everything I can to make my dream come true of playing professionally. It was that moment where I was like, is this going to happen? I have no idea. Whereas I thought maybe it was in the bag 2 years prior, have a good college career. I'm hit with the reality that not every team likes you or wants you, but you have this opportunity. You have this one ticket in going to Colorado. Make the most of it. That was Fernando Clavijo, who drafted me, and I got signed to a developmental deal.
Wow.
Which, again, like I would have signed anything and everything just to make that roster. And then it was just the start of my career of just grinding away.
Yeah. At that point too, all your accolades, everything that you've ever done at that
Doesn't
point
matter.
doesn't matter anymore. Clean slate. And I think that's a tough one to come to terms with in that way, because you're showing up and you're like looking around and saying, damn, I've done probably more than a lot of these guys. And that's how my mindset would be. I would show up somewhere and I would say, oh man, I've done a lot more than these guys. They should know who I am. Why am I having to start at the bottom of the totem? And then I think, again, for you, you've had those experiences where you've clear pathway, then all of a sudden, obstacle. Clear pathway, obstacle. And at this point for you, it's just like, okay, you've already played the game enough to recognize this is just another part of the game.
Yeah, and I certainly didn't go into the professional environment thinking I was better than anyone else. I knew, based on my experiences of going to college, that wouldn't be the case. And I leaned on those experiences going into that college environment to then take all this adversity going into my professional career and just try to learn from everything, having the best attitude I possibly could. I regretted some of my attitude going into college, but this time I was going to make sure that I handled everything exactly the way I wanted to and be as professional as possible. Whatever they needed, a good teammate, a good training player, go grab the waters, move the goals, anything and everything I was going to do just to put my best foot forward. That team had some awesome players. Jovan Karofsky, Mike Petke, Paulo Mascheroni, Clint Mathis, Eric Denton, who was the left back on that team, Aitor Karanka, who had played for Real Madrid, that came to that team. I say that also to say it was an awesome group of young players. That was huge. There was older and younger. There wasn't many in between. And that is the Colin Clark, Jake Petersons, Dan Gargan. And so in that first year, it was great to have the young players around, but it was amazing to have these older players around to show you the ropes. And it felt like college in terms of kind of the dynamics of the locker room, obviously on a professional level. But again, I just approached it with the right mentality, which is, I think, ultimately why I got the contract and was able to like maintain and work my way in.
The thing is too, like doing more research, you don't really get to know the players' careers to the detail that I've probably been able to read about. But even in that season, you get loaned out to Seattle, play a little bit in the USL, and then you come back and then you guys win. You and those young guys who were drafted in Colorado, you guys win back-to-back reserve leagues.
You did some good research.
I did.
I don't know where you could find that. Yeah. The reserve league back then was interesting. It was the day after every first team game, young guys getting in, some of the older guys getting in. Some clubs handled it where they would bring in outside players to just play that weekend. I was thankful and appreciative that the Colorado Rapids at that moment really tried to develop young players. And we had a good core of young players that took it serious. And so having that around me with like every once in a while, a Jovan Karofsky would join, the reserve game, like every blue moon, or Clint Mathis or Eric Denton. And ultimately, a lot of those guys went on to have long careers.
And they won the MLS Cup. I think the year that you were in the expansion draft to Philadelphia Union in 2009, I think, or 2010, they ended up winning the MLS Cup.
After I left.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, which was difficult. Those years in Colorado, the coach that gave me the full confidence and really my break was Gary Smith. And I don't want to say intelligent enough, but I don't think I was able to take on much tactics.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we played at that time was either played in a 3-5-2 where I'd play wing back or out of a back four in the left back position. But it was open up, hit the channels to an Omar Cummings, or go direct to a Connor Casey and then move up the field. Get the ball wide with Steve Guppy, cross it in. And so I was able to do those things that they asked and do them well. And then ultimately leaving and going to Philly was difficult because I was on a low number. They only could protect so many people in the expansion draft. And when I found out that they weren't protecting me, I was like, I'm absolutely going to get picked up. That's where I felt like I was like, I feel like I'm giving enough value here. I'm on a low number. Chances are I'm going to Philly. And sure enough, they picked me up. And it was bittersweet that they had won right after I left, and now I'm starting on an expansion team. But I will say that having gone to an expansion team and then going to another expansion team in Vancouver, that set me up for success when I came to LAFC and this expansion year, knowing exactly what to expect, exactly what a building of a roster, of a team, of a culture actually meant to put my best foot forward again at LAFC.
Yeah. I think in Philly, though, you logged the most minutes of any player in that season. And then, of course, you're there for, I think, only a year, maybe a year and a half?
Year and a half.
Okay, so a year and a half. And then from there, now you get to move to Canada and experience Vancouver, which I've heard is a beautiful, beautiful city.
You'll experience the same.
Yeah, we will be. But I guess for you moving there, was that now an opportunity for you to kind of showcase that you're ready to be a full-blown starter, be a leader of a team? Or did you always feel that way maybe coming out of Philly?
No, I still think I felt in my head as a young guy still earning his way. Even though as an expansion team, you're going into the locker room with a Joe Cannon, a Jay DeMeritt. I had played with Joe previously in Colorado, but Jay DeMeritt coming off a World Cup, John Thorrington, some older guys in that locker room that were by and far the leaders. Mm-hmm. That group was super talented. Had a shocking season that first year, and I came into a team that was in dead last, kind of got thrown into that group, but it was some really quality players. I think we just needed a year under our belts of consistency, of, expansion teams. And this is what I learned a lot is expansion teams, if they're not prepared before the season starts with a stadium, with some sort of structure, a training facility, stuff like that a lot of these expansion teams are doing, then it is buses, vans, moving. And I dealt with it in Philly. And then going to Vancouver, it was the same. And when you have that sort of inconsistency and that volatility and like, where are we going here? And players are moving into a market, it is so difficult. And I think Thorrington, taking the reins at LAFC, he experienced that. So he had everything prepared. And I think that LAFC was probably the first club that was just created as opposed to a USL team coming in that had things set up prior to. And now every club does. But to go from getting traded there in 2011 to then building and getting more pieces of the puzzle. And again, we moved into BC Place, which is downtown. You have the environment. The fans were coming in numbers. It was a great environment. And in 2015, defending and having that good group, it was Jay DeMeritt, Stephen Betashore, Andy O'Brien, who's a longtime veteran in the EPL, And then David Alsted as a goalkeeper who played so well. I think he was probably the best goalkeeper at the time.
He's Danish?
Danish,
Yeah,
yes.
I remember him.
We played in more of a counter-attacking style. We sat in quite a bit, which is completely different to LAFC, but it was a good group full of a lot of talented players. And Vancouver was an amazing experience. And I know you said going to a different country didn't feel like that. It was fun to learn the different nuances of the different cultures.
It's eclectic, like really, yeah.
It's a beautiful city that got married, didn't find my wife there. We met in Philly, but like built my family there. And I'm so grateful for my time in Vancouver.
Alphonso Davies, I know, was there. How was, I guess you guys are both on the left side working, and were you one of his, I guess, always in his corner? Or you had to give him some tough love sometimes. What was that experience for you?
Alphonso came into the group as a 15-year-old, and anybody could see the talent that was there. Playing left fullback, he was a left winger. I appreciate that time of being able to like help mold a little bit of what he was picking up at the time. But from the get-go, he was a kid that obviously had the physical attributes. But what people don't necessarily know or talk about is he was able to pick up things very quickly. So different nuances to the game. If you were within the game and saying, in this moment, he's very tied to you should check and go. The next play, he would do it. I know that sounds simple, but a lot of people don't understand these little nuances or pick them up quick enough. He was a kid that was able to pick things up quickly and develop at a very rapid pace. His speed obviously helped with that, but it was great to be able to be a very small part of his development in those initial years playing behind him. And at the end of the day, he helped me look good numerous times with balls I overshot, and he was able to track down at a lightning pace, which he still obviously shows today.
Yeah, so from one left footer to the next left footer you play with now, we'll get to LAFC, and now another expansion team. What was your approach coming into it?
Well, initially in Vancouver, seeing that this club was coming about and materializing, my wife and I were like, we're never talking about that. Let's just not talk about it. It would be a dream, but let's just see what unfolds. When the opportunity presented itself, I was a free agent at the time. I jumped on it, coming home, knowing that I was at the later stages of my career. All of the things made sense for me. There was no promise again that I would be starting or playing, but to be a veteran leader in the locker room and someone to be called upon when necessary. Bob was very clear to me that any sort of playing time I was going to have to earn. I've done this before. I'm fine with this. Okay, absolutely. Where do I sign? I'm in. All of the other things as far as the stadium, those were obviously a factor, but knowing that those were already in the works and being built as opposed to an idea, I knew that this club was ahead of the game. They had those foundational pieces in that first year in particular, but then in just embedding yourself in a city that was, maybe people don't believe this, but was so thirsty for something like LAFC. Thorrington on the soccer side of things, you had Tom Penn, you had Larry Freeman on the business side of things, Richard Roscoe, who's created that culture. But from day one, everyone went above and beyond and just had a personable approach, did everything with integrity and with the people first mentality. And I know that might sound strange, but a lot of clubs throughout the league do the bare minimum. And they're like, well, we're doing what is expected of us. LAFC went beyond that. And I don't even think they knew it at the time that they were going beyond it. It was just what they felt was right. And so whether it's the training center, the stadium, everything checked all the boxes. And then that culture that no one could have expected in the 3252 was something that was like, honestly, playing in front of them at the Bank of the California Stadium at the time was just such a highlight of my career. But again, I had to earn it.
You, real quick, actually, one question. Which team would you want to have your jersey retired for?
That's an interesting question. I feel that my best years, and obviously the most with the Supporters Shield and breaking the record for the points, that year was my favorite year ever, 2019. The length that I was in Vancouver and the ups and downs and everything I learned in being there starting my family there, all of it, that just holds such a special place in my heart. With that said, and you're putting me on the spot, I would have to say LAFC in the sense of everything that it represents, having helped built it from the beginning, and now finishing my career, going into the front office side of things, and just what I will want to help to build as far as the academy and the pathway. Man, I'm a lifer, and regardless of whatever happens in the future, this is a club that I am the most passionate about.
All right. So I know we're going to get to the office here soon. So I want to finish off on this last question. I didn't really touch on some of the other awards you've won, but you won a humanitarian award. And again, you talk about the Supporters Shield. You talk about National Player of the Year. You talk about all these awards. So for you,
I don't talk about them. Yeah.
No, that's why it's up to us as hosts to come in with these things. But out of all the awards, Jordan, out of everything you've won, legacy-wise, what can you sum it all up for me? How would you want your legacy based on all those things?
I don't think that, I'm finished yet. So as far as just my playing career goes, I feel like I have left the legacy of someone who left it all out there, gave everything they could, whether that's on the field, off the field, at any given moment. So if I was able to, I was at a community event. If I was able to get in the game, I was contributing. If I wasn't able to get in the game, I was trying to help out the team get a result. So my legacy, with the awards, all those, like that stuff I rarely think about, is just that I left it all out there and I gave every single ounce of me. And similar to how I approached every game, I feel satisfied with that outcome, given I know I did everything I could.
I know you're always going to be chasing something. There's something that you need to keep. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to my therapist about that.
And last point, I think, for any of the young players who maybe have and are currently facing some of the adversity that maybe you felt in those formative years.
I would say to sit and reflect. I think too often something happens and then we just, bury it and move forward and not really know what that means. I think it is very important with every training, with every piece of adversity that comes your way, to sit and reflect and see what that means, and make sure that you are approaching it as not why is this happening to me, why is this happening for me, and try to learn from those experiences, because if you can sooner, then they will help you a greater amount.
Yeah. You develop a system and then you can apply that same process to everything.
100%. I think in sitting and reflecting on whether it's a training session or a conversation or a game, you'll be able to come and determine what are those little nuggets that you can learn at a sooner time and then help apply those in the future.
Love it. Jordan, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let's get to the office, all right?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course.
Anytime. This is a beautiful setup. I'm here.
I appreciate it. Thank you.